You are watching Metropole Television. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiage. This is Business AM. Welcome to your official sector trends. This is the part of the show where we tell you exactly what is trending in different sectors and the industries in the economy, other than the major things that are headlining the economy this date or today. You can join us at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. I am at Kiage Simba. Let's get into the conversation this morning. Now, Nairobi's premier logistics and warehouse park, Nairobi Gate, recently concluded a lease transaction with another major tenant, Balore Transport and Logistics Kenya Limited, which will take up 53,820 square feet. That's 5,000 meter square warehouse at the park. This follows significant leases signed with Ramco and the containers in 2020 prior to the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic globally. Now joining us this morning to talk about the logistics space in the country, where we are joined by Paul Williamson, who's the head leasing Nairobi Gate. Paul Williamson, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Simba. How are you?
Fantastic. Happy to have you around. Now, let's get first to talk about this partnership, and then after that we get to talk about the logistics space in general. Could you give us more bits into this deal?
Hi. Yeah. In terms of the partnership that we have with Bolloré. So Bolloré, as I'm sure all the viewers know, is a very established, both locally and worldwide, and one of the major supply chain operators. I think they're operating in 109 companies and have, I think, 35,000 employees. So we recently signed a lease agreement with them to take up our modern Grade A facility. And the fact that Bolloré has elected Nairobi Gate to house their current activities bears testimony to the quality of our location and the facilities. And it justifies our belief in the strong demand for ultra-modern Grade A warehousing, distribution, and logistics facilities.
Pretty much. So, Mr. Williamson, let's talk about this deal coming in 2021, a time when majority of the businesses and the industries, let me even talk about generally sectors, are deemed to be recovering from the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. Is this testament to the fact that business is coming back to where it needs to be?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of green shoots coming through the market at the moment.
Yes.
I think that there's no real secret as to our sort of current success. I mean, it's built on a long-term strategy with strong business fundamentals, and this probably has allowed us maybe to weather the pandemic maybe better than others, but also allows us to deal with challenges in the future. Without question, there's been, everyone's been affected by the pandemic. And obviously now there is a requirement to modernize. I mean, That hasn't changed, but if anything, it might have become greater during the pandemic. We've been able to adapt and target certain areas that have benefited from the pandemic. I mean, things like e-commerce and FMCG have obviously improved massively over the last few months because of people, being able to stay at home or just understanding the benefits of that. And I think Kenya is going to follow most developed countries in modernizing, particularly on the logistics chain.
Yes.
And warehouse probably is the most important part of that. Especially within Africa, it's an area that you can control. I mean, if you consider other parts of the chain, for example, ports or roads or other networks, this is an area where companies can view it as an area to increase their operational and financial efficiencies. And I think this is one of the reasons why we've seen the opportunity. We've invested up to date $90 million in Grade A infrastructure and warehousing. And I think now the pandemic possibly sort of not coming to an end, but it's given companies that more of an impetus to look at how they modernize and to move down this route. And I think that's what we're seeing now.
Pretty much. Let me just point you out to the 2020 Economic Survey report. And in that report that led to the rebasing of Kenya's GDP and added 500 billion into the economy, logistics was one of those areas that were pointed out as one that have grown tremendously since 2014 to 2020. Talk to me about that. To what direction is it growing?
Look, you know what? Everyone knows that logistics is nothing new. I mean, obviously, we've been involved in logistics in some form for many, many years in this country.
Yes.
However, the demand, especially for the opportunity to lease, world-class warehousing and logistics parks infrastructure, is relatively new. I mean, obviously, from our point of view, we're a landlord developer or developer landlord. So in terms of the infrastructure improvements outside of our control, for example, the SGR improvement, the road networks around Nairobi, I mean, these are plans that the government has put in place, and obviously we have to commend them for that. That has enabled a lot more efficiencies within the sector. What we can control is that within the warehousing space,
yes,
I think the idea is fairly simple. It's about getting product into and out of a warehouse as quickly and economically as possible while doing it safely. And this includes being able to maximize the use of the land and the building to store product efficiently with quick access and turnaround times. Specific examples of this, can be, for example, truck movement. Where do they park? How do they turn around efficiency? How do they unload and load quickly? And this requires more yard space. It requires not being able to block the trucks. So in terms of the operational efficiencies that you are seeing within the market,
yes,
I think this comes from overall efficiency within the chain, and that's both government and private.
Pretty much. All right, so let's talk about the competition in this space. Somebody will say that your segment is what we like to call the traditional segment when it comes to logistics as well. Is it heavily dependent on the performance of the business partners that you directly target within the economy?
Yeah, are you talking specifically about the 3PLs and the logistics providers?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of course, I mean, competition always breeds success, and,
yes,
and I think if you look at, a lot of the big multinationals are obviously within Kenya already, and more are looking to get within the market. The idea for them is that they're bringing technologies and operations that they've learned in other parts of the world,
yes,
that have been successful, and they're tailoring them more to more of a local market. And the idea is that the more competition we have, then the more efficiencies we should have, and it should drive down the costs. So there are a lot of local partners as well that understand the market.
Yes.
And taking all of them into account, I think that's where you're seeing the benefits of what's been done before, what they're learning from, and what's being incorporated to the market. And I think ultimately the competition is driving down the costs, and I think that's going to benefit the end consumer.
So let's talk about this growth that your space has experienced since 2014 up to 2020. Mr. Williamson, do we expect that this growth will continue, or this is a particular segment that's already at where it needs to be?
No, without question, we're at the early stages of this rather than the latter stages.
Why would you say that? Why would you say that, especially looking at the exponential growth that we've seen from 2014 to date?
I think it mainly comes down to, and I say this a lot, and sorry, I might bore my viewers with it, but it's
yes,
about efficiencies. It's about efficiencies. So I think everyone can look at the market and segment and see, particularly on the logistics, but where we have come from, particularly, let's say, 5-10 years ago,
yes,
was a very archaic system, particularly through our port network, our road network, and predominantly on the warehousing sector. And yeah, you've seen massive improvements in it. But in terms of where we are with the warehousing sector particularly, I think you'll find that, if you look at particularly what most people have been using is your old school go-downs that are very inefficient. They don't have a lot of access. They have road issues. Whereas what we're trying to do is we're looking at the modernizing on that particular part of it. And it's, I would say, a very small proportion of companies are actually using modern warehousing.
Yes.
And this is everything from, as I mentioned before, the road networks, your yards. It means about volumetric capacity within the facilities. It's getting the product in and out as quick as possible. And I think this is not being utilized anywhere near to the capacity that it should be. I would
yes,
say we're in its infancy. And I think if the more and more companies operate properly out of these warehouses, the more and more you will see that the market will grow because prices will come down and consumers will be able to buy more goods. It's as simple as that. I think there's a long way to go. I think we're in the early stages.
Interesting. Therefore, now as Nairobi Gate, then you find yourself in a place that is continuously growing, just as you're alluding to this morning. So to which space do we expect your company to grow to as well, Mr. Williamson?
I think that's a very good question, and I think that it's difficult to answer at this stage. I mean, we're very bullish about this market.
Yes.
We have invested so far. We've invested $90 million in this. So we obviously see a huge opportunity for this, not just now, but in the future. We know that the country and warehousing needs to modernize. And we're taking things that we've learned in other countries around the world and applying those same principles to Kenya.
Yes.
So for us, I mean, we currently have 105-acre site that we already have around 40 to 50% of it either under development or in planning. We've obviously signed a number of decent leases with some big local and multinational partners.
Yes.
And for us, we're continuing to grow this. We expect to see this expansion over a number of years, and not just in Nairobi as one node Nairobi Gate is. We're looking at other nodes within Kenya and within East Africa. So for us, at the moment, we see massive opportunities particularly in the industrial warehousing and industrial park facilities.
Let me take you back a little bit on something that you mentioned when we started this conversation on exactly where we are in terms of that growth. Do you feel that in the country so far where we are a bit lagging or we need to explore more opportunities is especially when it comes to tech? Because that's where the economy is headed, Mr. Williamson.
Yeah, I think there's obviously a lot of ways that you can look at technology. I mean,
yes.
Around the world, when it comes to warehousing particularly, they're moving away from manual and more into automated processes.
Yes.
And in some cases, like we've seen with Amazon, I'm sure a lot of the viewers and yourself have seen the automation that they've been able to do with using robotics to manage entire systems. And although we currently use management systems within Kenya, a lot of the top companies existing use that for allowing them to track where and when goods are stored.
Yes.
And when they need to be dispatched. I think at this stage as a whole, I think going as far as automation is more of a long-term view. I don't think it's necessary. I think at this stage, it's more about focusing on the efficiencies of the building and of the movement in and out. We obviously have a lot of opportunities here to modernize. And that is, for example, having buildings that are built at what we call at dock height, which is we raise the building by 1.5 meters. And that allows the trucks to reverse up to the building. It allows for forklifts to drive into the trucks and pick or unload and load the trucks. I think that is, it is a technology advance, and I think that is more important. I mean, if you look at some of the current warehousing and some of the operations that they have,
yes.
without this sort of thing, it's unsafe, it's timely, and I think that's a technology we need to look at more and more as opposed to investing into automation. We need to look at how we maximize the space on our facilities. So we talk about volumetric capacity, which basically means how we get the ratio of land to building. I think for that is very important, and I think simple things like racking, for example, which is extremely common in many parts of the world. In Kenya, we're not using it to its full potential, and I think racking is very important. So for us at this moment in time, it's not about going the Amazon route and getting robots involved. We don't need to do that. What we need to do is we need to look at what are simple things to improve all of the efficiencies and go that route first of all. And that is the technology that we need to invest in at this stage.
I like the way you keep on referring to efficiency. All right, let's move away from that a little bit. And when somebody is listening to you, Mr. Williamson, then you hear that you've invested up to 90 million. So let's talk about that. When you look at this particular segment, how do you think banks view this logistics sector? Is it a potent area for easy financing from the banks in the country, or you're still viewed as A sector that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, well, I mean, from our point of view, I mean, we obviously have a lot of interaction with banks. I mean,
Yes.
we have a lot of different funding. We're constantly being approached by different banks. You know, I think that in order for the country as a whole to develop, warehousing logistics are a key factor to that, and banks are aware of that. And I think that for our clients, you know, getting funding for these sorts of facilities is not a problem. And then on the other side, for us, we're also looking at options on how do we improve the financial aspect for our customers. And that can be simply from offering payment plans, so over a period of time.
Yes.
So looking at ways in which we could offer, you know, financing deals, not necessarily mortgages, but more for, you know, a lease to buy situation, where you would typically pay the building on a very similar to a mortgage, but pay it off while leasing. So typically your first payment, you might be maybe paying off 5% of the building while leasing the 95, and then every month you then pay less and less towards the lease and more towards your financing of your property.
Pretty much. All right, let's conclude like this then. This conversation, Mr. Williamson, now will be Gates in the next 5 years. Can you help us get a picture of you in 5 years?
Yeah, I think what you will see is we'll be one of the major hubs,
Yes.
nodes for a lot of the logistics companies. So the idea for the logistics companies of having what we call a campus, where you would have a number of your facilities or one big facility in the same location, allows for companies to have a lot of you know, efficiencies of having trucks in the same location, of having product in the same location. So we would see a lot of the big players moving into our park, a lot of your 3PLs and multinationals, local companies, but also we would see a lot of processing facilities, factories, data centers, cold storage, all located in the same area. And the efficiencies of providing one park mean that they will have, you know, all the backup facilities, so your power, your water, all that type of facilities, but also they have the opportunities of things like, you know, modern sewage facilities. They've got a road network. All of this basically will make them a lot more streamlined. And I think where we'll see this park is one of the major nodes within the whole of East Africa. And we will have a number of different businesses based out of there. And that will happen very soon within the next 5 to 7 years.
Pretty much. Paul Williamson, head leasing Nairobi Gate. Thank you very much for taking your time to speak to Metropole Television.
Simba, thanks for having me.
Fantastic. That is Paul Williamson, head leasing Nairobi Gate, speaking about this logistics space. And if you remember, in the economic survey 2020, this is one of those sectors that actually did grow exponentially, leading to that rebasing of the economy that added 500 billion shillings into Kenya's GDP. One opens for taken back to the time that he came into the studio this morning at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. I am at Kange Simba for that direct interaction. That's it. Good morning.